it's not always fists and powers that make a scene grand, but rather how symbolic they are of the struggles, ideals, and sacrifices of superheroes that make these scenes iconic. From the streets to the cosmos, these scenes have etched their names into the Hall of Fame, so here I am with the top 35 biggest superhero fights of all time. Like, share, subscribe for part 2 ASAP.
I'm Batman.
Michael Keaton pretty much signed himself into the history books with his role as Bruce Wayne in 1989's Batman. It set a very important precedent for the character in film adaptations, and if we're kind enough to overlook the mockery that was Batman and Robin, it's safe to say The Dark Knight is DC's most beloved superhero. Yes, I'm using the entry from The Flash, but just hear me out, okay? Like, it's probably the first time Batman is shown in full glory in a live-action flick. He's utilizing every gadget at his disposal, showing off his strength and agility, and even tossing people around while gliding with his cape. It's a performance that commands our respect and admiration. He's basically the Batman from the animation and comics that we all know and love. Also, it's kind of funny that Keaton was considered too old to play the role back in '89, but here we are in 2023 with a 71-year-old Cape Crusader. There's a special kind of connection you build with your team, especially if you've been fighting overpowered monsters for thousands of years together. However, one thing's for sure, you should never date within the circle. IKARIS was a bit too late to the party in that regard, and if you really think about it, I guess his breakup with Cersei might have pushed him over to the dark side. I mean, I'm not complaining though, because it eventually led to this awesome showdown between him and his ex-teammates. The battle was definitely large scale because it had IKARIS using all of his powers to fight the very people who've seen him battle for countless ages. As expected, we got to see an abundance of those cosmic beams he loves to overuse, but that's not to say it took away from the scene. After all, bro still managed to win against each and every one of his opponents, save for Cersei, because, well, I guess old flames are the hardest to extinguish. Didn't expect to see this on my list now, did ya? That's right, just because it's a list of superheroes doesn't mean I'm only going to be mentioning Marvel and DC flicks. The Old Guard was a solid Netflix offering, which is a statement growing rarer out in the streaming era. Talk about a fight for the ages, eh? Out of all the live action fights on my wish list, Colossus versus the freaking Juggernaut was easily one of the top entries. Like, come on, this is a pure show of brute strength that would get any Giga Chad's muscles hard. Of course, I wasn't expecting to see it in a Deadpool sequel, but we're living in a mysterious age, so anything's possible. The fight itself is surreal to watch because it starts off in anticlimactic fashion. Luckily, Colossus manages to remember his commitment to Mother Russia and ended up giving the viewers what they wanted. Yeah, sure, it ended with a cheap trick, but I'm still counting my man Pyotr Rasputin as the champ here. Can you imagine what it would be like to get in the middle of one of those punches? I should really bring back the "don't try this at home" disclaimers. The animal kingdom is a funny world, isn't it? Beasts like lions and tigers are kept at the mercy of puny humans, and we've even found a way to turn wolves into cute little pets. The world of Sony and Marvel doesn't focus on mammals though, so they decided to give us a nice little fight between a spider and a lizard. I'm gonna be honest here, I personally find the lizard to be the creepiest villain ever in a Spider-Man movie, and yes, that includes Venom. Luckily, Peter Parker doesn't feel that way, which is why we get to see an awesome encounter in 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. Huge shout out to Stanley for a hilarious cameo in the middle of an otherwise grand battle, but I also want to point out this scene proves that Andrew Garfield does know how to cushion Gwen against a bad fall. It's a common thing to blame all your problems on society, but Black Adam is more of a solution kind of guy. Just take a look at how he defeats the Justice Society without even taking that much damage. I was actually surprised to see the number of punches they threw at Dwayne Johnson in this sequence, especially because of that clause in his contracts which limits the hits he takes. I guess the studio managed to find a way out of that because the battle feels very realistic, even though Black Adam is still the uncontested winner. I also enjoyed watching guys like Dr. Fate and Hawkman flex their powers, because you do need a bit of variety, right? My only disappointment here was that they didn't cast Kevin Hart as one of The Rock's opponents. That would have taken this fight to a whole other level now, wouldn't it?
That's for my cruiser. Tell him the man in black sent you.
Might be cool because of his powers, but Iron Man is cool because of his wit. Well, the both of them have a lot more to offer, but I just wanted to sound badass with my opening line. 2012's The Avengers set the tone for what would go on to become the peak era of superhero blockbusters, and a lot of that success can be attributed to the concept of crossover team-ups. As far as this particular fight scene is concerned, we're all treated to massive entertainment as the God of Thunder took on the God of SASS in a riveting encounter. The blows were visually spectacular and the choreography was brilliant, but I think Tony Stark's most effective weapons were his words. My personal highlight has got to be when Thor thinks he scored a clean hit with that thunder blast, but actually ended up giving Iron Man a free recharge. I really want to see the BTS moments of how Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. shot this scene. These bloopers could easily go viral on TikTok. gotta hand it to Keanu Reeves. The man's an absolute darling in Hollywood and hasn't been part of anything scandalous despite the industry's notorious reputation. Bro even managed to revitalize his brand image simply by being a badass assassin. Before the days of John Wick, Keanu had taken the world by storm as Neo in The Matrix. Now, if you know anything about the film business, it goes without saying that a massively successful film will most definitely spawn a few sequels. And that's exactly what happened with The Matrix Reloaded, and one of the highlights there is the fight scene between Neo and all those Agent Smith clones. Like, seriously, the battle just kept going on and on despite the hero's obvious dominance. It's like Agent Smith was Hela, but his unlimited weapons were just his own clones. A scene of this scale definitely deserves a mention because I'm sure Neo would have been happier if stopping bullets was all he had to do, or to block all those negative vibes, you know. Hardy is in many ways an actor who performs just as well without his face being shown. We've seen it in most of the Christopher Nolan films he's worked in, and we've also got to see a bit of it in Venom. Yeah, I know the movie's no masterpiece, but it did bring in a lot of money, so it counts as a success to the studios. One of the reasons why it worked was because of the fight scenes, especially the final one between him and Riot. Look, I'm a very simple guy. To me, symbiote either mean Venom or Carnage, so I don't cheer for anyone else. The battle was pretty intense despite the overload of CGI, and it was edited well enough to seem appropriate for its length. I mean, Riot was never going to find favour in my book, so it was extremely satisfying to see him getting blown to shreds in that rocket explosion. Wolverine finds his way into these lists one way or another. It's kind of like an unspoken rule of the TVCU. However, this is one of those cases where my fave isn't exactly dominating the fight. How do I put this in a simple way? Deathstrike and Wolverine walked so that Logan and X-24 could run. Yeah, this was the first time we got to see a bunch of adamantium warriors face off against each other. It was a pretty solid display, even though I would have loved to see Logan control the outcome of the battle without having to rely on liquid injections. It was a pretty messed up way for Deathstrike to go, but all things considered, I walked out of the cinema hall feeling good about it. Wait, that actually makes it even more messed up. When a king's position comes under threat, it's his duty to restore the faith in those who believe in him. T'Challa might not have been able to do much during round 1, but round 2 against Killmonger was a sight to behold. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes encounter you'd want to see in a big-budget film, and I want to give praise to Michael B. Jordan for also giving us a memorable character, even though he was the bad guy. The whole train sequence had my anxiety jumping through the roof, and when T'Challa effected the final blow, you could literally hear everyone in the audience breathe a collective sigh of relief. Yeah, you can try all you want, but there's no way you're ever going to replace Chadwick Boseman as the true Black Panther of the MCU. That's actually a serious compliment, considering he only has one solo movie to his name. Why should boys have all the fun? I know we all love to see a badass male dominate everyone in his path, but it doesn't hurt to show some support to an equally badass boss girl. Wonder Woman is the epitome of female strength, and her 2017 solo film showed everyone exactly how to make a good movie with an overpowered female lead. I'd love to get into the specifics of Zack Snyder's screenwriting, but the rules of this list dictate that I focus on the Battle of Veld. Makes sense too. Princess Diana totally rules this encounter by overthrowing an entire army of soldiers using her skills and wit. She might not be as strong as Superman, but she did manage to lift a tank and destroy a building with one single blow. Can we start a petition to keep Gal Gadot on as Wonder Woman even under James Gunn? I'm not ready to let her go just yet. I used to like going to school until I came across my worst enemy, math. I just couldn't deal with it, especially geometry. I swore never to even think about the subject after I passed out. That was, of course, until I saw Spider-Man No Way Home. Peter Parker's battle against Doctor Strange was one of the most fascinating sequences I've seen in a Marvel film, and I don't just mean that from a visual perspective. Bro really used the power of numbers and angles to defeat the man worthy of the title Sorcerer Supreme. What makes the scale of this encounter large is the obvious flurry of magical spells, and what makes it memorable is the way Spidey gets himself out of a tricky spot. Benedict Cumberbatch really must have been questioning the stuff we learned during all those years at Sherlock. At the end of the day, he got bested by a Gen Z nerd.
Just FYI! Okay!
Making your parents proud is every kid's ultimate goal, no matter how scared they might be of them. That holds true for Shang-Chi as well. Only thing is, bro's gotta defeat his own father to make him proud. I don't want to give in to the whole Asian parent stereotype, but come on, the dynamics of this relationship were clearly catered to suit such beliefs. Anyway, I'm not here to debate that kind of stuff. I want to talk about how awesome the father and son duel was towards the end of the movie. It was definitely a deadly face-off, which also highlighted the nature of Wenwu's relationship with his son. Apart from the excellent fight choreography, I loved the expression on his face when Shang-Chi took his rings away from him. It totally felt like one of those the student had become the master moments, didn't it? It's kinda tricky to face off against someone who can just regenerate after you chop everything off his body. It's also difficult to beat someone who can't feel any pain. So you can imagine how confusing the fight between Deadpool and Ajax would have been in the latex assassin's first solo movie. Of course, we all know who was gonna come out on top, but as I've mentioned before on the TV region, it's the journey that matters. In this case, it's a whole sequence of chaos and violence as both fighters give it all they've got while their surroundings crumble around them. Just keep in mind that you've got Colossus in the background as well, but it's Wade Wilson and Francis who completely dominate this scene. Also, did you know that Ajax was in a Transporter reboot? Yeah, maybe it was that film's failure that led into a life of crime, turning cancer patients into mutants. It's no secret that Wonder Woman is my queen, and rightly so. She's proven time and time again why even God should be worshipping her. If you need any evidence, look no further than the epic final battle between her and the God of War. No, not that one. Kratos is way too cool to be beaten by a goddess. What looked like an easy win for Ares at first eventually turned out to be brutal humiliation. The way this scene was directed made it feel larger than life, and I gotta give props to Patty Jenkins for pulling off a stellar job. Man, I could watch Wonder Woman fight all day and never get bored. Robert Pattinson and his eyeliner strike once again in one of the best build-up scenes of 2022. The Batman was the perfect tribute to David Fincher, and the whole Shadows monologue perfectly captured the essence of a modern-day mystery thriller. What made it look so grand was the way it transitions to the eventual attack on those goons. The actual fight is brutal, and it's capped off by one epic line: "I'm vengeance." Bruce Wayne is obviously no pushover when it comes to his fighting skills, but when you see him emerge out of the darkness like that and go to town on a bunch of weirdos, it instills a sense of admiration for what he's doing, which is essentially wiping the trash off the streets. Okay, that does sound a bit mean, but with that kind of makeup, those guys were asking for it. Thanos was the guy who made the freaking Hulk look like a school kid in front of him. The dude's an absolute unit. So if I were to say that Iron Man gave him a good fight, you know he had to pull out all the tricks in his suit. Tony Stark is just a regular human being in terms of physicality, but his character is so much more than that. He's a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist for sure, but most importantly, he's a tactician. That's what we get to see in the epic battle on Titan. Thanos is fresh off wiping the floor with Doctor Strange, while Iron is fresh off escaping a barrage from the freaking moon. Despite that, Bro manages to make Thanos bleed with sheer grit and determination. Batfleck sure would have been proud. Of course, the Mad Titan still wins the battle, but for such a matchup to last that long was a massive achievement in itself. If you were to ask me who I'd like to see as the new Superman, I'd still say Henry Cavill, because I honestly can't think of anyone else who can play the role of Kal-El with such fluency. I mean, seriously, every single time I think of Superman, all I can see is Henry's face, and it just goes to show how synonymous he's become with the character. As far as massive battles are concerned, he's been in pretty much all of the DCEU ones. The fight against Namek and Feora-Ul is one that's mostly forgotten, which I personally think is a criminal offense. It starts off with Clark Kent getting his butt handed to him, but the way he bounces back from the damage is what elevates the sequence to a whole other level. You can see the anger in his eyes and the passion in his punches as he stops holding back and gives his buddies from Krypton a world of pain. Everyone across the globe is going crazy for tickets to see Taylor Swift in The Weeknd, but can you imagine how awesome it would be to watch the freaking Hulk take on Thor in real life? That's the MCU equivalent of a Royal Rumble. Of course, there's some humor as well because it's a Taika Waititi film, but the fight most definitely lived up to its fight. Even Loki was thrilled to see his brother get the puny god treatment, so you know both parties were giving it their best shot. The key highlight was obviously when Thor awakened his inner thunder and blasted the Hulk with lightning. I don't want to reduce this scene to just that one moment. It truly felt like it was a battle of the champions, and the only thing I didn't enjoy about it was the way it ended, which frankly speaking didn't even make any sense. A comic book nerd, this must have been an amazing moment for you. I was hoping for the day we'd get to see Tony Stark face off against Bruce Banner, and we finally got that in Age of Ultron when Iron Man had no other choice but to call upon his Hulkbuster armor, aka Veronica. To be fair, both Tony and Bruce had designed this suit to handle the Hulk rampage, but I'm going to give credit to Iron Man for being able to quieten the angry green giant after a fight of epic proportions. When I said I was covering the biggest superhero fights, I wasn't kidding, and this just goes on to prove it. It's the kind of stuff that can end an entire city, and was pretty much heading that way until Tony decided to purchase a building and use it to stop Hulk's rampage. The key takeaway from here was that you should strive to be rich enough to buy real estate on a whim. Remember back in 2016 when everyone was literally placing bets on the victor between Civil War and Batman vs Superman? Those were some good times, hey? While the box office battle might have been a one-sided affair, the big finale against Doomsday was a well-earned victory. I know it's technically supposed to be the trinity of Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman against a nuked up Zod. Let's be honest here, there were two heavy lifters and Bruce Wayne wasn't one of them. I'll give him credit for that one shot he landed towards the end, but the true hero of the saga is our very own Kal-El, who pulls off the ultimate sacrifice to save the world. Everything about this battle was grand, right from Wonder Woman's legendary entrance to the laser duel to the eventual double murder. Zack Snyder really has a thing for theatrical visuals, doesn't he? Nobody really talks about Captain America and the Winter Soldier. No, I'm not talking about the Disney Plus show. That one's better left off as a forgotten mistake. Now, when it comes to the film's fight scenes, there's nothing as overpowered as a Hulk or a Thor, but it doesn't have to be in this case. Just look at the highway scene for reference. The stunts on display are incredible and would have taken a lot more effort to shoot than an overdose of CGI. The coordination between the actors was incredible and the cinematography complemented the general tone of the scene. Also, I don't think I've ever seen Steve Rogers as clueless as he was here. The sudden appearance of the Winter Soldier totally caught me off guard, and the onslaught that followed kinda reminded me of 70s gangster flicks. The Russo brothers do have talent, they just needed the right outlet to express themselves.
8 minutes, Cap.
With all grown to love the Guardians of the Galaxy as a funny little gang with occasional glimpses of savagery. One of those glimpses could be seen in Volume 3's hallway fight that goes on for almost 3 minutes while looking like it was done in a single take. This sequence was the best piece of filmmaking I'd seen in an MCU flick since the end of the Infinity Saga. Just look at the camera movements and the use of slow motion to enhance short moments that would otherwise just be forgotten if they were just done at normal speed. The brutality of the team was in full swing as they took no survivors at all. Everyone puts their best foot forward, and I could finally feel the same kind of exuberance that was missing for so long in the MCU. Rocket Raccoon really wasn't kidding when he said he was done with running away from his problems.
The name's Rocket. Rocket Raccoon.
I know Thanos humbled him in Infinity War, but back in 2008, there was another opponent who gave us an epic encounter with Hulk. Let's just forget about his She-Hulk version and accept the fact that Abomination is a serious threat who can easily overpower the angry green giant, as could be seen in their final battle. There was destruction everywhere and physical toughness was at its peak during this sequence. Of course, Bruce had to come out on top, but personally speaking, I felt Abomination was the one who owned the fight. He looked so much more threatening and didn't even seem affected by Hulk's punches till after the helicopter crash. Plus, the CGI looks amazing here, and it's from 15 years ago. What on earth has happened to the VFX team at Marvel? I'd actually love to see a showdown between Abomination and Thanos. Now that would be a sight to behold.
Hulk! Smash!
We've made it to my top 10, so I've got to kick things off with a classic. The fight between DC's two most popular characters was hyped beyond belief and managed to do justice to the promotions around it. To put it simply, this was every comic nerd's fantasy come true. Look, I can think of 100 other things Superman could have done to win the fight, but come on, this was the moment I started to give Batfleck some respect. It's a drawn-out encounter that shifts its momentum in phases, which is why everyone was so hooked until the part where Batman uses up all his kryptonite to gain the advantage. The true winner, however, wasn't Bruce Wayne, it was Martha. The mere mention of her name brought both him and Superman to work together. Now that's what I call real power. The MCU has got an entire army of characters now, probably enough to start their own city. However, there are 3 key superheroes who managed to spearhead the franchise towards the massive success it enjoyed up until 2019. Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man are names that everyone recognizes now, and they deserve every bit of attention in the world. I still don't understand how they weren't able to defeat him, but the visuals were good enough to land the fight high on this list. We got to see some sick moves, whether it was Iron Man's cannon blast or Steve Rogers finally lifting Mjolnir. Those 2 moments alone were enough to establish it as one of the eternal MCU classics. Thor does well too, but he seems ridiculously underpowered for some reason. Maybe it was all that beer. mentioned the highway fight, I was obviously going to talk about the final battle as well. Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes are besties for life, so to see them rough it out in brutal fashion was a standout moment in the film. The choreography is solid as usual, and the fact that it was happening in one of those massive helicarriers just added more substance to the stakes. Of course, it gets a bit too emotional towards the end, but it works in favour of the scene rather than against it. We get to see two long-lost friends connect with each other in the face of adversity, and the sentimentality of this sequence is what pushes it to greatness. It wouldn't have been that impressive if it was just two super soldiers trading punches, right? For me, the most appealing battle in Infinity War was the one between Thanos and Doctor Strange. Like, how could it not? We were witnessing two extremes facing off against each other with everything on the line. And to be fair to Steven, he wasn't using his most powerful weapon, the Mind Stone. That was one of the reasons why Thanos managed to win, but even despite all those Infinity Stones at his disposal, it wasn't an easy victory for the Mad Titan. Doctor Strange showed us magic beyond our wildest imagination, and he was making Thanos sweat for most of the encounter. I actually believe that he could have ended up winning even without the Mind Stone if he just applied himself a little bit better. I sound like one of those corporate managers at a big IT company, don't I? Things are heating up, so it makes sense to include a rage-induced assault from the MCU's flagship character. Iron Man isn't a guy you'd associate with losing his cool, but he did just find out who killed his parents, so his anger's justified. If you add to the fact that Captain America kept the whole thing a secret from him as well, then I really can't accuse Tony of tipping over to the dark side. There was actually a lot to take away from this encounter from a philosophical point of view, but let's not focus on that. As far as the battle's concerned, it was thrilling to watch, but I'll still maintain my stance that they let Cap win only because of plot armor. There's no way a normal dude with glorified steroids is taking down freaking Iron Man. That's just not the Giga Chad way of life. Don't you dare mess with a woman named Martha, otherwise Batfleck will come and get you. That's exactly what happens in the warehouse fight, which exemplified the Dark Knight's true skills from a realistic standpoint. It's not just about looking cool for the camera. Bruce Wayne uses all his skills and tactics to ensure Martha makes it out of the ordeal alive and well. He took the necessary risks to ensure the job was done, and he utilized the very best of his resources to make those goons look like a bunch of chickens. There was a genuine intent to kill in Bruce's eyes, and he didn't hold back one bit. I kinda got goosebumps the first time I watched this scene in the cinema. We don't usually get to see Batman in a threatening light when he's put next to overpowered superheroes like Superman and Wonder Woman, but this was his chance to shine, and he grabbed his opportunity with both hands. I'm all about celebrating legacy characters, and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man has most definitely earned that title now. After all, it's been more than 20 years since we first saw him don the suit. While everyone may love to talk about the OG Spidey flick, my personal favourite is the sequel with Doc Ock as the villain. Even more impressive was the train fight scene, which gave us a very different kind of outcome. There was no winner or loser here in terms of a knockout, but rather it was about what Spider-Man represented as a superhero. He gave it his best, and even though Doc Ock had the upper hand for most of the duel, it was what followed that established the victor. To the uninformed, this fight transitioned into the legendary train stopping sequence, and that alone is good enough to be considered a win for Peter Parker. Yeah, that constipated look was worth the effort, Toby. We're all proud of you. Ways, we can consider Captain America Civil War to be a test pilot for the Russo brothers. After all, they knew they were going to be brought in to direct Infinity War and Endgame, so it made sense to use this film for reference. Like, it's supposed to be a Captain America flick, but I think we can all safely say it was as good as an Avengers substitute. The airport battle gave us the first indication of an ambitious crossover, and to kick things off with Spider-Man making his first MCU appearance was a nice little cherry on the cake. If we're to talk about the gigantic battle, there's so much going on at the same time that an extended fight scene also fell short. Whether it was Ant-Man showing us his giant form, or even Wanda flaunting her elevated power range for the first time, the audience was treated to a spectacle, and we have superhero ego to thank for that. To be the strongest in the world is an S-tier accomplishment. To be the strongest in two worlds is even better. Well, the second world exists only in sentiment now, but it still counts. The magnum opus of Man of Steel was the final battle between Kal-El and General Zod, and rightly so. The two Kryptonians gave it everything they had, and neither one of them was going to step down no matter how tough it got for them. The resulting destruction might have angered a lot of people, including a certain Bruce Wayne, but coolness comes at a cost. Both fighters were evenly matched for the most part, but something had to give, and it turned out to be lethal. I would have still preferred to see Zod left alive by the end of it, because that would have been Superman showing him mercy, but the General clearly wanted to push his buttons, so we went out with a snap that was harder than Gwen's back. Pretty poignant stuff if you ask me. Did hint at it in the airport scene, so you should have at least guessed this one. If it's big, grand, and excessive, there's only one entry that can take the spot, and it's the final battle of Avengers Endgame. Clocking in at a staggering time frame, this had everything the MCU had built for over a decade compressed into an outburst of grandeur and magnificence. The sheer magnitude of this sequence makes the airport scene look like a side character to the final boss. Not a single moment felt like a drag, and people were holding onto their seats for the entire duration of this battle. Social media had gone crazy with the whole 3-hour runtime, but if you can keep the audience engaged, they won't even realize when it's all over. That's kind of what happened with me, because I was so engrossed in the visual perfection of this scene that I forgot I had to go to the toilet. My bladder still curses me to this day, but it was definitely worth the effort. Hope you liked the video, so please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that you'll enjoy.